Everyone, welcome to episode 12. Episode 12, man, we've made it this far together of Truth Noir.
It's a lot.
And I'm here once again with a buddy of mine from episode 5, if you've been keeping up. Dirk Beecham was my co-host when we were talking about all of the things that have been going on while we were all getting distracted at the time. It was when we were getting inundated with the Confederate flag and
oh yeah,
and also with Donald Trump running his stupid twat mouth. You know, we were talking about it last time. These people should not be paid attention to. They are what is wrong with society. You know, it's that same shit with like Paris Hilton and the Kardashians and Donald Trump. Just stop paying attention to them.
Yeah,
You know, there were other things going on in the world while everyone else was paying attention to what they had to say, right?
Yeah.
And so Dirk was here, you know, helping us sort that out. And we're here again to talk to you about another thing. Unfortunately, that person that we are here to talk to you about, because the Supreme Court has ruled that this horrible monstrosity is a corporate person, is Monsanto. And we're gonna, that's their full logo, and it looks pretty nondescript.
It looks so happy.
Yeah, right. They do the plant.
It's got a little plant there,
Oh,
and like a little kid drew it. So they love children and they love plants. That's my impression I get from that company.
Yeah, they, you know, and it's one of those. Logography is one of these things, and we talked about this in the first episode of the show about mind programming and how the way things are said, the way things are presented have a certain psychological effect, and you put it perfectly. The way that logo looks is very, it's very comforting, right?
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
Very comforting.
We grow your food, and if we grow your food, we have to care about you, right?
Yeah,
And
we care about kids.
And it looks like it, you know, it was drawn by a third grader, and
then a little plant in there. It's just a little healthy little.
Yeah, and so so you've probably been hearing a lot about Monsanto for a while. Depending on how old you are, they've come into major media coverage at certain points in time when they've had certain personnel changes, which we'll get into a little bit later in the episode. But Monsanto is a company that has been around since 1901, officially. They've been around. The people that have been manufacturing the chemicals that they manufacture have been doing so for a little bit longer than that, into the 19th century. They incorporated in the early 20th century. And they have been manufacturing poisons for over 100 years.
Can I say you have headroom to the people in the control room?
I don't know, man. I'm just,
okay. Oh, he's got a little headroom, that's all.
Maybe if I
there we go. Yeah.
You know, I mean,
That's
it's whatever. We don't do this show based on like technical.
Oh yeah. We're here to educate.
You know, man. This is the people's show.
The people show.
You know, and when you look
that
at
alien's not going to come into this room, is he?
You know, on Santo, like what is on Santo? It's not until you watch for a minute longer and be like, oh, that's what it is. So
yeah, what's that old joke? Monsanto has got a name that's sweet and innocent, that sounds sweet and innocent, but stands for pure evil. A lot like ISIS. Or no, I ruined the joke. It's supposed to be, ISIS has that sweet, innocent name that stands for pure evil, just like Monsanto. Anyway, no, it's too late. The ship already left.
No, you ruined it, Dirk. And you know,
you know what else has a beautiful symbol? British Petroleum. they have that green thing, and they have like a yellow thing in the inside with the little green leaves on the outside. So it looks like simultaneously like the sun, and then it looks like a flower. So you don't realize that they couldn't. That's the two things they hate the most, is the sun, because the sun gives away energy for free,
Right.
and that's their enemy. And
Yeah.
then flowers, because they don't like flowers. They love to kill them. All life they like to kill, but
Well, yeah, man, and it's one of those things where, you have these corporations and you have their logos, like we talked about the Monsanto logo, we talked about any of these other, corporate logos where they sort of represent one thing to the psyche, but then they do these horrible things to the environment.
yeah, like your kid will. Yeah, you wouldn't want your kid to eat genetically modified food.
No, of course not, man.
And I've had people that get hyped up on right-wing radio, and this one guy. Normally, this guy would never fall for something like this. He would stick to his guns. He's a big right-winger. But one day he came to me and says, "Oh, Dirk, why do you?" This is back when we were having that election coming up where it was about labeling in California, and he was like, "Oh, Dirk, blah blah." He's taking the right-wing side, and I said, and his wife hadn't even got pregnant yet. Now he's got like a little kid, but but they were planning on they were trying to have a kid, and she hadn't even got pregnant yet. And I just turned to him and I said, "Would you want your kid to eat genetically modified food?" And for a second, he dropped his guard and just was honest as a person, as a expecting dad or a future dad, and just said, "No, I would not want my kid to eat genetically modified."
Yeah, no, man, of course not.
No matter how much he normally side of KFI radio and everything, he just looked at me. He said, "Stop," took a breath, and said, "No, I would not want to feed my child."
Because I'm a successful guy and I shop at organic food markets, and it's just so much corporate horse shit that
Well, they're making it's just to make money, and the thing is
Yeah, man.
Monsanto is already making enough money, and they're already cornering a market of pesticides and herbicides that they're ahead of the game, because a certain amount of those chemicals have to be used, a minimum amount.
Sure.
And you can't run a large farm and have the yields you do without a certain amount. And yet, it wasn't enough for them. So they came up with this cockamamie plan, this first genetically modified corn, then soybean, and now there's a couple others that are stapled, and pretty soon, as we talked about, in about a year or so, it's going to be apples. Right. Anyway, but our staples have already been taken over, and so they could, not only do you get a profit off of it, but because farmers now have to pay you a fee just to grow the crop. So not only do they grow a crop, but they pay Monsanto a fee. Now there's a lot of farmers that didn't want to grow genetically modified corn, for example, but pollen can blow in onto their farm and contaminate their plants, and they will test positive for the gene. And so Monsanto comes in and charges them a certain fee because they test positive, and they will say to them, and the farmer will say to them, and this doesn't, and they lose in court. You'd think this would hold up. They would say, "Well, we didn't buy seeds from you," and Monsanto's thing is, "Well, somehow you illegally obtained seeds from us." Didn't purchase the seeds
through basically an act of God.
But we somehow know that somehow you illegally obtained the seeds, and now you're growing our corn, and so you owe us a fee. And as far as I know, no farmer's ever won a court case, and yet it's the most ludicrous assumption to make.
So, not only in addition to yes, they've been in the business of genetically modifying crops. That's actually a fairly recent thing that they've done within the last 40 years. Before that, they made other completely awful chemicals like DDT, Agent Orange, polystyrene, Roundup herbicide, And this goes back to what you've been talking about with regards to their specific seeds that they have patented. These are seeds that are called Roundup Ready, where they are resistant to Roundup. So, and you would think that like, oh, this is a great thing where like, oh, you know, we can grow our crops and the Roundup will only kill the weeds. But then you have the problem of, okay, well, basically what you genetically engineered your crops to do is to produce their own herbicide. So that's basically poisonous for you to eat. When your crops are producing an herbicide that otherwise you would just wash off, like your apples, your other crops that would go through a washing process before they get distributed to the public, your plants are actually producing this chemical within themselves.
Yeah, they have two types of plants. One's produce the actual Roundup stuff,
Right.
or something like it, and then others are just resistant to Roundup, to where the farmer doesn't have to do what he used to before, and that was be certain crops you could run certain animals through, or let some other pests through that wouldn't hurt your crops, but they would eat whatever was bothering your crops.
Right.
Well, now what they could do is, but you couldn't use either a pesticide or an herbicide during that period when it was, you were naturally doing what farmers had been doing for thousands of years, and that was let certain farm animals pick off, what was that? Well, now they can just dump more than they ever have. And also, crops being so closely related to weeds and other plants, being a plant themselves,
Right.
were also susceptible to Roundup. So you couldn't just spray it on there without having a lower yield. Well, now with the genetically modified crop, you can really just just dump tons of herbicide on, and the yield is still high. But unfortunately, now it's impregnated in the food, and the plant has not had enough time to get it out. So by the time it makes it to your table, they're now finding out that more and more corn and stuff have Roundup in it. Not to mention, the plants themselves are so saturated with this, the farm workers are getting sick at a high rate.
The crops themselves are producing this in addition to being sprayed with it when they actually break ground.
Yeah.
You know, and so this is obviously a matter of huge concern. Like the crops that have been patented are now making their way more and more and more so into your grocery stores. And like you said earlier, these these crops are not only being used to saturate the market, but they're also being used as a catalyst to undermine independent farmers. Like you said, the farmers, Monsanto, demands a clipping from one of your plants if you're an independent farmer. One of Monsanto's seeds blew over and cross hybridized, and part of that DNA is now able to be found. And now Monsanto is able to sue you, the independent farmer, for copyright infringement. Okay, well, farming, much like being a teacher, is not a high-paying job. And especially in the case of farmers producing a yield of crops, you're not making a whole lot of money per bushel of thing. I mean, think about it, people. Like, if you're in a grocery store and if you want to buy, I don't know, if you want to buy a pound of apples for $1, and that amount of apples takes up this amount of space in a grocery bag, consider that pound of apples that you're buying for $1 or whatever amount of money it is that product has to be delivered to your grocery store by a truck driver that makes a certain amount of money. That crop has to be picked off of a tree by a group of people that make a certain amount of money. And then you, the farmer, the owner of that plot of land, gets the rest of it. So, you know, for a pound of organic material that you produce versus the cost that it actually took you to produce it, that person isn't making a whole lot of money. And so when a piece of shit corporation like Monsanto sues them because one of their trees grew a crop that was pollinated by one of their seeds that was brought there maybe because a bird in a Monsanto-owned farm ate one of those seeds and then shit it out over your independent farm, and then that seed grew into a tree that grew produce on your land that Monsanto is now suing you for, you basically have no choice because they're going to sue you for millions of dollars or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever
so you don't even
is
take it to
worth.
court. You just usually just pay the fee. They come to you and they ask you a fee. They don't even.
Yeah, and oftentimes that fee is.
And then
all
if
right,
you don't pay the fee, then they threaten you with a lawsuit.
you're going to sign over the deed to your farm, and so what it is it's basically a giant land grab.
Yeah,
And that's
it's
why
sad.
Monsanto has always been horrible. Like they've either produced chemicals that have caused cancer, you know, and this is what they used to do. Like they're producing food now, and that's pretty nondescript, right? But here, I found this photo, and this basically shows.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it basically shows what all they're responsible for.
So you can
Pesticides, GMO.
Hey, could you send it to me on Facebook?
Yeah, man, for sure. But they also made, that's not listed on here, polystyrenes. And polystyrenes were like when I was a little kid.
Up until the 70s, it was considered okay. It was common to be a food, the thing at McDonald's where they put your.
Yeah, any kind of styrofoam. And this is what they found was destroying the ozone layer. Like when I was a little kid, and you know, back when you were a young man, like this is what the big deal was. Like Earth Day and all of this stuff they were talking about. Let's save the ozone layer, and we succeeded, as it turned out. People rose up in mass and they were like, okay, well, we got to stop making stuff out of styrofoam, and as it turns out, most of the chemicals that Monsanto has produced or has come to produce have been banned in America. DDT, Agent Orange, these things are not legal to produce in America.
Yeah.
They're not legal to own or use in America because they're fucking awful.
Yeah, but so what they do is they turn around and they sell them to Latin America and Asia,
where all of our produce has come to come from.
Yeah, you know, and then they want to have this, and then they want to be cute and make it so you're not allowed to label food that comes from another country. So if it's on your shelves, you don't have. They want to take away your right to know where your food came from.
Right.
That's so horrible. It just never stops with them. It just never stops with them, you know.
Well, and this is where we get into the like. Okay, so not only is Monsanto doing horrible things, we're going to get to Donald.
my
That's
buddy.
Donald Rumsfeld. He's our fuckface
Yeah.
of the week. We're going to get to him in a little bit. So yeah, the chemicals that these assholes have come to produce cause these kinds of birth defects in people. Like they cause brain defects, and they cause deformation of the skull, and they cause mental retardation. In the places where they are manufactured, the people that work at these chemical plants and have direct contact with them, this is what their kids end up looking like when they're born.
That's horrible.
And
That's horrible.
And so there's that, and then there's also we'll get to that in a second too. When they do these tests on rats, they come out looking like this. They grow these horrible fucking tumors, and you can say, well, why would the FDA ever approve these chemicals, right? Like bovine growth hormone, also a product of Monsanto. When they test these things on animals before they get to us, this is what the animals come out looking like, and then they still approve it. Well, why? Why, do you ask? And it's when we get to this point in the show where we start talking about the government connections of Monsanto.
Yeah.
And so, and these were too many for me to actually memorize, so I have to like actually pick up my tablet here and read from some of them. And one of them is Michael Friedman. And now, mind you, as I read these off, these were people that actually served concurrently, whether it was with the Monsanto Corporation or whether it was with the government. But it's always been one or the other with these pieces of shit. One of them was Michael Friedman. He was the Senior Vice President of Research and Development for Monsanto. And then he, after that, after his tenure there ended, he came to be the Deputy Commissioner of the Federal Food and Drug Administration. Okay, well, that could just be a coincidence. Maybe he's just really good at his job, and the government wanted him.
Ralph Nader calls that the revolving door.
Yeah,
between corporations and then regulatory commissions.
Yeah, it's corporate cronyism, it's corruption, it's a conflict of interest, it's all of the things that the actual laws of this nation speak against, but that they actually happen and no one's able to do anything with it because the people that the government has appointed come from these corporations that lobby Congress to make the laws that make it okay for them to appoint these people to these positions in Congress. And it's just this circular snake eating its own ass kind of thing that you, the public consumer, are unable to fight against. There's more of these people. Michael Friedman was one of them. There's another one, Linda Fisher, and she was the vice president of Monsanto, and she then very shortly thereafter came to be the deputy administrator of the EPA.
Wow, that's horrible.
Yeah, the Environmental Protection Association. And so this corporation that makes all of these horrible chemicals like DDT and Agent Orange, herbicides, pesticides, Roundup. Roundup is the most benign of the things that they've produced, and that is in conjunction with their takeover of the human food supply is what they've done. They patent these seeds, and then they're able to sue independent farmers where these seeds happen to be, whether it's by way of wind or bird shit or any kind of natural act that is no fault of an independent farmer. They're able to seize these farmers' land, right? This is what Monsanto does, and they've been doing it for over 100 years. They've been giving you cancer. They've been producing the chemicals that have facilitated these horrible diseases, and yeah, this is how they do it. So the next time you want to be like, oh, it's just a corporation making money, you shut your fucking mouth and listen. I'm tired of your goddamn nonsense, because these things are not okay. They're not ethical. If you were the owner of a corporation that produced a thing, and you were the only one that produced it, you would be charged with antitrust violations, right?
Yeah.
Well, these people are able to monopolize a very, 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 very large part of the food supply. they're able to monopolize a very, very, very large part of the chemical production that is allowed to, and is oftentimes necessary. You know, I mean, pesticides and herbicides, they have helped with the production of food over the last couple hundred years. I'm not gonna lie, but when there's only one company producing them, and when their corporate heads become the heads of federal institutions,
regulatory agencies,
yeah, these are not okay. And so, yeah, so that's another one. And then the most recent one, although they did all serve in conjunction with each other at certain points in time, is Michael Taylor. And he started off his career as an attorney for Monsanto, defending them from, and you know, oftentimes successfully, from people that were like, hey, what you guys are doing is messed up lawsuits. And he was the soulless piece of shit that, you know, was able to defeat those arguments because our justice system is actually broken and ineffectual. So he was an attorney for Monsanto, and then he was appointed to the position of policy director for the FDA, and that was when the RBST, bovine growth hormone, was approved. You know, which has been found to not be beneficial, not to cows, not to humans. Also a cancer agent, just like every other chemical that Monsanto has ever produced. They also produce saccharin and aspartame, which we'll get to in a second. Then after he was policy director for the FDA, he went back to Monsanto to serve as their senior vice president. And then after that, okay, and this is now his current position, he's the senior advisor to the current FDA commissioner. This is under the Obama administration. So if you think that these institutions like the FDA and the EPA are looking out for you, they're not. They don't give a fuck about you. They are in the pockets of these corporations, Monsanto the mainmost of which, that has been selling you poison for the last century and a quarter, essentially. And that brings us to our fuckface of the week, and that is this piece of shit right here, Donald Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld was chairman and CEO of GD Searle, which was a company that was acquired by Monsanto, and he served as Monsanto's on Monsanto's board of directors for quite a while. And it was from GD Searle that Monsanto bought the patents to make aspartame, which they very shortly thereafter renamed NutraSweet, right? Because it's NutraSweet. It's
nutritious and sweet.
It's nutritious and sweet, and that's fine.
That can't be wrong.
This is yet another cancer-causing agent in the long history of abominations created by Monsanto. And then after that, Donald Rumsfeld served as Secretary of Defense under George W. Bush. And we've all heard his nonsense talk, you know, when the Gulf War was going on. And
if I knew when I went, I knew that I...
Yeah, and then he's since come out to like recant all of the stupid nonsense that he said that got people amped up over going to war. But what I want to know is, how the fuck does being the CEO of a company that makes an artificial sweetener, how does that qualify you to be Secretary of Defense?
It shows you why we were so screwed up in those two wars. Because we were running around, it was a mockery. And it was a fiasco. That's the word I'm looking for, not a mockery. It was a fiasco. And those two wars. And, well, there we go. I mean, that explains it. I mean, why these, you know, and by the way, we went into Iraq with the best surveillance we have, be it not just satellites, but drones and everything in there. Killed 1 million people. But there for 10 years. So it wasn't like as a in and out.
Right.
And
yeah.
yet
we're still over there. We're still in all these
no one
places.
ever saw ISIS. And then when we left, the military goes, "Oh, there's ISIS there." Well, dude, how can you not have seen it in the first place? And by the way, where did they get all the equipment that you couldn't see with your satellites and your drones? They said, here's what the military says to us. Well, if you give us another $1 trillion,
right,
and another 10 years, this time we won't fuck up, and this time we will get ISIS out of there. And I'm thinking, you know what? I bet you if we give them nothing,
we'll investigate it.
Give
us $1 trillion.
You know what? They knew ISIS was there all along. They were the ones who sold ISIS all the equipment because they want to go back there. And this whole thing, like, well, yeah, it was, I don't know where they were hiding, but they were hiding behind some rock. We couldn't see it.
Well, and as it turns out, and this is
it's like the junkie, cousin you got. You give me money. This time I'm not going to blow it on dope. This time I will spend it on my bills.
This time, yeah, or like, hey, man.
And you're like, dude, you told me that story every time. I can't keep buying it.
Yeah, man.
But your average American is enablers.
Oh,
they will buy it. They will give them another lump of dough.
But we elected you. We have to trust you.
Yeah, there's enough enablers in this country that will
man,
revote for another invasion of the Middle East.
It's garbage, and it's one of those things where, the truth is starting to come out, and the fact of the matter is that we funded the Taliban.
Mm.
We funded them when they were fighting Afghanistan in the late 80s, and we needed their help.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why we needed their help was to basically fight the Cold War on the ground versus Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So we funded the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And we gave them weapons to fight Russia.
And we should have funded someone else to do that too. We picked the wrong tribe.
Yeah, right. So
and
then,
you remember that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and it turns out that ISIS is no different. These were people that we funded, we trained, and as it turns out, they turned against us again, just like Osama bin Laden did.
Hey,
even though,
do you remember that?
Even though he was a trained CIA operative.
Oh yeah.
Just like Saddam Hussein was.
What time is it?
Did you guys see that the U.S. military just recommended we use Al-Qaeda fighters against ISIS?
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's
it's
just
that kind of shit.
That just is BS.
We have
BS,
information
man.
coming into us all the time, and this is a new one that sometimes we get distracted bullshitting with each other on this show, but
say it again.
When the news media at large is saying, well, the government is thinking about giving Al-Qaeda weapons to fight ISIS, and if you're on board with it, you're a dumb fuck. Like it's time to pull your head out of your ass and realize that all of these things, like we've been saying all along, like the people on whose shoulders we are standing, like we're not the first people to say this, but it goes to be said again because apparently no one's listening still, is that all of this money is just getting funneled into the same places over and over and over again. And it's absolute garbage. And Monsanto's involved in it too. Like, there are countries around the world that are banning GMO crops. And it's because it's an American company and they're doing horrible shit, just like America has done horrible shit all over the fucking world for a long time. And I know it sucks to realize and acquiesce to and be like, oh, well, shit, this place that I love where I, saw the sun for the first time is doing stuff that I don't agree with it. But the fact of the matter is, you don't. You don't agree with it. You don't agree with your tax dollars going to murder people. You don't agree with your tax dollars going to subsidy grants for piece of shit companies like Monsanto to make chemicals that give your relatives cancer. That's what they're doing. They've been doing it for a long fucking time. So, you know, if you're thinking, well, what do I do? There are certain things that you can do, and you know, maybe it's too late.
Well, always, you know, just try your best to always vote in every election. And I know, you know, it doesn't seem like much, but you know what? Like, you know, I voted for labeling in the last California election, and I voted for
Labeling of GMO crops has just been overturned.
Yeah, and but what wasn't overturned in California was we voted to double the amount of space that a chicken needs to live in its life.
Sure.
So, you know, and so make sure that you buy chicken and eggs from California. And if it's more expensive, so what? Eat less chicken and less eggs, you know? So it's just, you just got to do what you can little by little.
Yeah, man, these
always
things...
vote for a politician that is you feel is the best. And I mean, I voted, people kind of first used to laugh at me. I voted for Ralph Nader in 2000, 2004. People said, oh, it's throwing your vote away. But you know what? If most people got behind me, and a lot of people did want to vote for Ralph Nader, and more people did, it would send a message. He may not have still been president, but it would send a message. And you just need to vote for who you want for, and stop this, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. You know what? Voting for the lesser of two evils always keeps bringing us evil. And you need to start voting for who you want. If you want Bernie Sanders, vote for him. If you want Elizabeth Warren, people need to start voting more for who they want. And when more and more percentage, you know, with Ralph Nader, it would have been 10% of the population would have voted for him. That's who said they liked him in the 2000 election. If a percentage that high actually turned out, because in the end it wasn't that high, nationwide it was 1%, because people chickened out and they said, well, I don't want to throw my vote away. It wouldn't have thrown a vote away. What it would have done was that it would have created, he would have had television time next time. His party would have had television time. Right now, the only Democrats and Republicans get television time. You know, because you have to have a certain percentage of votes for a third party to get television time, or a fourth party. And so by you not voting the way you want, we now live in this weird democracy where we only have two parties that are allowed to have television and radio time, where in Europe, 5 parties are, you know, or Japan or Israel.
Yeah, man, I absolutely agree with that. And it's one of those things where, you know, if you're thinking about what to do, this is a good place to start. You want to vote with your spending dollar.
Yeah. There we go.
Get the Boycott app. Scan your products that you want to buy, and see if if the money that you're spending on them goes to where you want it to go to. If not, don't buy it. We've already spoken. You know, McDonald's has been losing market share. That dentist fuck that killed Cecil the lion, he's not in business anymore.
Good.
Because you guys spoke out. This is the power that people have. We're getting towards the end of the show, and we got to sign off here. But I want to thank my friend Dirk Beecham once again for coming on, and for the second time now, and talking to us about these things. Stay vigilant.
Okay, make a quick shout out.
Yeah.
On September 18th in Monrovia, there's the Action on Film Festival. So come on down and support that. You get to see a small independent films made by local producers like me and Norm.
Support your local producers, whatever it is, whether it's food,
that's right.
whether it's entertainment. We appreciate you tuning in tonight, and we'll catch you next time. Wherever you're going, get there safe. Take care.